Welcome to a transformative space where evidence-based tools help you reclaim your personal power, align with your highest path, and let your soul shine brightly to create a life you love. This is SoulSHINE, and I'm your host, Dr. Saidie Rodriguez. What if your intuition has always been speaking to you, but you've just been trained not to trust it? Not because you're disconnected, not because you're doing it wrong, but because you've been taught to prioritize being right over being true. Today, we're talking about what it actually looks like to rebuild that relationship with yourself. Hey, and welcome back to SoulSHINE. Today's guest is Sean Nicole, an intuitive guide and spiritual teacher who helps women reconnect with their true essence and build lives that feel deeply aligned, expansive, and fully their own. She's the creator of Essential Immersions, which are transformational travel experiences designed to awaken the soul and bring women back into their bodies. And she's the host of Getting Essential. Through her work, Sean blends intuitive insight with grounded guidance to support women in moving through fear and stepping into the life they actually want to be living. And I'll say that this conversation is really personal for me too, because I've personally experienced Sean's work directly. And what's more powerful than what she teaches is how she lives it. She embodies a level of self-trust through her intuition that so many women are craving, especially people who feel that they've done things right and still feel disconnected from themselves. So today we're talking about what it actually takes to build that kind of relationship with your intuition and what gets in the way. So welcome, Sean.
Thank you so much for having me. So happy to be here.
So am I. I want to take the listeners back to the time in your life where maybe you felt like some of us, where your intuition was something that maybe you didn't trust, that you didn't have the kind of relationship that you have with it now, and walk us through what that was like for you.
Yeah, of course. So I always say that my story looks a little bit different than most because my first spiritual awakening happened when I was really quite young. I actually was in my senior year of college. So I was 21 years old. My father passed away really tragically. And I think that's what sort of like blew open my consciousness. And when I look back now, I always say it's almost like I was so emotionally tired that I didn't have a lot of bandwidth to like care about what people thought or fight my soul. It's almost like my human was just so tired that I was like, do your thing, soul. Like I have no energy to like interfere or I was just like, whatever, like soul, take the reins. So that was really when I started to take bigger leaps in my life. But I would say prior to that experience, I definitely felt my intuition. It's funny. I went to UCLA, which is a great school, but I didn't want to go there. And when I went to go tour the school, like I asked for a sign and I got this crazy sign. My relationship with my intuition, I would say, was very getting a lot of no's for the things I thought I wanted and then getting yeses to the things that ultimately were divine for me. So I'd say if you're really early on in your path, the universe does a lot of heavy lifting, and I love that. So if you're getting a lot of rejection, see it as protection, right? Like I think about, I got rejected from all these schools I thought I really wanted to go to. I didn't want to stay in Southern California. I didn't want to be anywhere near where I grew up. I'm from Orange County. And you know what? I had the best 4 years of my life at UCLA. I got to see my dad all the time, not knowing, of course, he would pass away a couple of years later. So just know that I think a lot of women, especially, we feel pressure to get it right. And intuition becomes no exception. It's like we apply that, I have to get it right. I have to excel at being intuitive. And when you can relax and know that trust is a process and intuition is always going to surprise us. It's not about getting the highest marks. It's about trusting your body and being willing to also go right when maybe you actually wanted to go left, if that makes sense. And that was really how I heard my intuition early on in my journey, just like learning with grace to accept rejection, listen to my body. And then as I cultivated a deeper relationship with my soul over time, it has evolved. But that was really the start before I had the words for it. Like 17-year-old me looking at colleges, I didn't know those words, but all I knew was got a bunch of no's. I got this cool yes. I took the yes. And then everything unfolded from there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I
Okay.
think there's some nuances even in your response that I would love to explore with you a little bit deeper because naturally our brains are meaning making machines and
Mm,
we have we have whether consciously or unconsciously a tie to the outcome, the school I want, the job I want, the relationship I want, what I think it should look like in order
mm,
to give me the life that I think that I want. And I
mm.
think sometimes there's nuances even in that because do I really want this thing or is it just the feeling that I think I'm going to get when I have it? It can
Yeah.
also be, I think there's, different layers of am I making decisions not just for other people's expectations, for what's best for the family, the relationship, the job, the people I serve, and what keeps us like separate from listening to the intuition, but also how we think we need to get from point A to B. And maybe there could have been a possibility where you thought not getting into one school or another school, like there could have been resistance because you thought it had to look a certain way. So I guess how do you personally look at or talk to the women that you serve about when sometimes our mind, our overthinking, our logic, our need for survival, safety, belonging conflicts with either self-trust or listening to the intuition or surrendering to it?
Yeah, I think that that's a natural conflict because we, as people with like ideas of what our lives should look like, we want things to look a certain way. And I think the important word is attached. When there's an attachment to this outcome, it's really indirectly saying or directly saying to the universe, my will is wiser than yours. And ultimately, that's not true. Like, I love this text called A Course in Miracles. It's been a big part of my process. And there's this lesson, like, gives me chills. It says, like, God's will for me is perfect happiness. And I think about that experience in college, like, truly, I had the best for you. Like, everything about my experience was so perfect. It's just not what I thought that I wanted. And I really rest in the knowing that when I'm attached to an outcome, which will still happen all the time, when, especially for me in like work and I'm single and I'm dating, I will get very attached to like, my person needs to look like this. It should feel like this. I want this outcome with this person. But what I try to do when I'm in those states of being is like come back to my body and release, because I don't think that that's our soul. I think the soul is actually a very relaxed energy because the soul is energetic. So it's not attached to a material outcome. It's an energetic essence that lies within us. So I know that I've kind of deviated off my soul when I'm like, it's got to look this way. And I'm like grabbing it by the reins and I'm like, I'm not going to be safe. I come back to myself and I say, hey, what can I do to support you right now, to love you right now, to remind you that you are always safe. And even if this thing doesn't happen the way that you want it to, trust that the highest outcome will occur just in a way that you couldn't even imagine. So it's almost like you need to comfort and reassure the human side of yourself. And then it allows you to surrender in a deeper way. But I think that that's a lesson that we're learning our whole lives because surrender is not easy. And we also just want to control things because we think that when we control them, we can guarantee that things are going to be okay. But the truest surrender is knowing that we'll always be okay and that really the universe's plan is better than ours. As much as it's hard to say that and know that and feel that, but over time it gets easier. And having, I say, practices that help you really comfort the human side of you is important. Saying like, hey, I know you're scared. I know you're worried everyone's going to think you're a crazy fraud, but that's not the ultimate truth. And that creates a way that you can, I'd say, nurture these very real parts of yourself. Because yes, you're a soul, but you're also a human with mental conditioning and attachments and desires and cravings. And when you can tend to your human, it makes like following that soul a lot easier.
Yeah, I think that's such a beautiful answer. And how you had mentioned some of the ways you talk to yourself, but if just to put it in more practical or real terms for anyone listening who wants to nurture their relationship with self or with their soul, their spirit, whatever they want to call it, what are other ways that you do that or you see your clients do that in a practical, real way that they could start right now?
Yeah, I think the definition of practical is important to define for yourself because what the mind will be very sneaky. It will define practical as like what on paper makes sense. But I'm like, that makes sense to who? Makes sense to Joe down the street. Like everyone's going to have different definitions. And the soul, even, I just spent this past weekend with my mentor, Nikki, who's someone that you are involved with as well, being that you took her course. And it's funny because we were together and she was like, I don't want to, like, I feel all these desires arising and they don't feel convenient and I don't know what to do with them. And I was like, listen, I think we all feel that way about our soul desires, especially when you are far, like even for me, I'm like, I do so much to make my soul happy and live by my soul, but there will still be times where I'm like, and now you want to do this. And that seems really challenging. And I don't know how I'm going to do that. But practical is something that I just would want everybody listening to look at. Like, what is practical? What does that mean? Do you have a different definition of practical for you than you do for practical for your child? Right? Like, I think about, I don't personally have children, but I know you do. Imagine if one of your children were like, Mom, I really want to go to Costa Rica for the summer. And you'd be like, well, babe, like, let's figure that out. Do we need to apply to programs, figure out grants? Like, think about how crafty you would get. But you might feel your soul be like, I really want to go on a trip for a week. And you might be like, that's ridiculous. I have family, I have kids, I have a job. Like, that's impossible, right? So that's where we want to really check ourselves. But intimacy with the soul is a daily practice. It doesn't need to be that we're doing extreme things. I think tiny things add up over time. Like for me, one of my longest standing practices is seated meditation. I've been meditating for over a decade. Some days that's just like 5 minutes with my hands on my heart. Other days that's like 20 minutes, 25. But finding those ways that you can check in with yourself, if that's like, oh, I'm dropping my kids off and I just sit in the parking lot with my hands on my heart for 5 minutes and then I drive home. So it doesn't have to be these major shifts. It's mostly just these intentional moments where we say, so I really want to connect with you. I want to feel you. That could be a walk in the park, writing in your journal, having tea, being present. And there are ways that you can put those into your daily routine so it feels like a day doesn't go by where you don't have some sort of check-in or intimacy with your soul.
I love that. Yeah. I think what you're speaking to is more like a state of being. It's not
Mm.
like necessarily a certain task or way to do it, but just an intentional relational space with yourself of like whatever that might look like and allowing some fluidity as the seasons change or the day changes. But really, I hear what you're saying is a relationship, just like you would with anyone else. I'm thinking of you. What do you need? I'm with
Exactly.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you think about it, we are in relationship with ourselves. So I think most people don't maybe see it that way or think about it, but ultimately it is the most important relationship we have. And so it's just about like think about checking in with your best friend. It's like, okay, I'm going to just, even for me, sometimes talking to my soul is like sending myself voice notes where I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy, da da da, because it's a relationship that we're nurturing. So I think when we can remember that, it creates space for us to be like, okay, how do I want to personally have this relationship with myself and with my soul?
Yeah. And I think even as you're saying it, because it's funny because it's like it is a relationship with something, but that something is us. And sometimes you can look at it like more meta, like I'm nurturing something outside of me that's also a part of me. But I think that I'm just reflecting on my own journey of learning from you, from Nikki, from other people in my life of more of this like integration, that it's really not as separate as maybe I used to once believe or was taught to me. Because even your earlier example of, I want to go on a trip, and then your mind overrides it and is like, that's crazy, that's inconvenient, I haven't prepared, I don't have the money. And you could even get curious about like, well, where does that desire come from? Is that your soul? Is that from some other part of you? But really it's all of you. Like, I think it's easy to override ourselves from our mind and dismiss our dreams, our desires. And so it becomes the way that when we're like adulting, that it makes logical sense, strategical sense to put our desires to the side, focus on nurturing the family, the community, our parents, whatever it is, the responsibility in front of us, the career in front of us. And I think over time, that's how we end up getting disconnected. Like we find ourselves finally maybe in a space where we have a season where we could enjoy this life, but we don't even know what that is or who we are within it. And it just dawned upon me that in such a simple way of like, no, but that little whisper was your soul or your spirit or your heart or however you want to language to it, that it's not separate from you. It's not something that I need to necessarily, like you're saying, meditate on. It's just checking in with myself, with the truth of me, my preferences. What would your advice be to someone who does find themselves after many years or decades of, I don't want to say denying themselves, but maybe putting their own desires to the side? Do you see that as part of your soul communicating with you? How can you reacquaint yourself with your own self when you've been disconnected for so long?
Yeah, I think that there's like Buddhists, I believe, are the absence of desire, right? But actually, I don't think Buddhists believe in reincarnation in the soul, if I'm not mistaken. But there are some spiritual texts that will be like, oh, the soul, like you just exist, your awareness, there's no preferences, there's no craving, there's no suffering. I definitely don't prescribe to that. I think that the desires of the soul are very real. And it is a helpful check-in to say, like, what part of me wants this? Because the soul generally wants for experience. The soul is all about experience, which makes detaching easier. Because if you really check in with yourself, the soul doesn't really want the outcome as much as it's like overjoyed and excited for the actual experience. And when you can decide that your desires they're sacred, they're holy, they're also what's best for everybody. This is a harder thing for people to mentally grasp. I think especially women who are self-sacrificing, they're people pleasing. You want to understand that if we're all like little microcosms of the creator, when we follow our heart's desires, everybody around us wins because they get to see us and our vibrancy and our light. And I think what's hard about being a woman in 2026 is we have been largely taught to act like men. And women aren't valued for their energy, for their essence, for their being. We think that people value us for our doing, which is actually not the way that the feminine is meant to be honored. If you think about it, like your children, they might not have the words for it, but they'll value you because they're like, oh, my mom is amazing. She makes me feel so good. I love being around her. And that comes from you following your desire. So I think learning to see desires as healthy, as safe, and that you can choose to honor the things that are true for you. And it's not like everybody around you loses, like they actually win because they get the best of you. So I think kind of that reframe then makes following a desire, listening to your heart feel like an important thing to do. And then that makes it easier. And knowing that your soul is in its essence love. So it's not going to desire something that's like inherently terrible. I think sometimes we're like, oh my God, am I going to follow my desires? And like everybody's going to be like complete. It's like, no, like the soul in its essence is like pure love. So you don't need to worry about having these like terrible desires. I think we have this weird definition because people who are following their desires that we see out in the world, they're following their egoic cravings, right? Like think about, I call them like cheap desires. Like people are like having affairs and I'm like, that's not your soul. That's like your unhealed ego that is then chasing cheap thrills versus I think like desire in its essence, in its purity is so wholesome. And I would say like loving and benefits everybody. So that's where I would recommend like anybody start is just like really reframe what a desire is and know that when you're actually following your heart, the need to escape through these like very low level desires, that doesn't become as tempting anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think
Okay.
it is a great challenge, even to go back to the paradigm of looking at yourself in a sort of detached meta way, like, you're saying, is this my ego? Is this my wounding? Is this something else? Or is this the purest part of me that feels relaxed, that feels open, that feels love-based, and allowing that to give you some clarity. And I do think what you're saying too probably could also be its own conversation, all the societal, historical constructs around what it means to be a woman, a good partner, a good whatever, how our desires, since we're talking about desires, might be seen as selfish, or, that word is so loaded. And what does it mean to, if we go back to earlier comment that you had, having a relationship with ourself, how does that play a role in the dynamic of a healthy relationship with yourself, actually fostering the highest path for all those around you? But how much also courage and deconstruction does that take? Because where are the ways that we have, bless you, where are the ways that, society has taught us that to be a quote unquote good person, a good woman, good whatever it might be, provider, that we've set up the system against ourselves, so that the moment when we are listening, it is disruptive, and our mind does get in the way and judge. I'm going to hurt someone by telling the truth. I'm going to hurt someone by, I'm going to disappoint the people around me by no longer showing up in this way, because it's at the cost of myself, until the pain is so great and I'm done, that it kind of forces that moment of intimacy with self, of honesty with self. And that's like, I think for so many people, the time where it kind of forces the scales to tip, because there's so much like ingrained unconsciously, societally, about what it means to be a more central figure in our own lives.
Yeah. And it's such an interesting conversation, because I even think about like my dad, for example, who passed. He was a very like loyal parent. Like he put like being a dad first. And I think, as I mentioned, I don't have children. I would love to one day, but I think really, especially when your kids are young, you have to put your kids first. And of course, you don't have to, right? Like there are plenty of parents who choose not to do that. And we could get super meta and be like, but those souls chose those parents, and, they'll be fine and da da da. But I think that we want to really look at what our personal values are and what's important to us, and to know like there's oftentimes way more nuance to a situation than our mind would like to think, because the mind is very like black and white. It doesn't like nuance. That's why we have so much like difficulty even meeting each other in discussions, especially in the United States, right? We're either like, it's this or it's that. And like, that's not how the world works. So we could take the definition of like being a good provider. There might be a lot of nuance to that. It might be that, okay, if I chose, and you are a woman who's also the provider of your family, but you can really look at from a soul perspective, what does that look like for me to be a good provider? That means for me to, bring home a certain amount of money, but there's so much nuance in the way that I do that. And what does that also mean? Like my values as a mother would mean like it's important for me to be a provider, but I also want to be like present with my children, and that requires me to make time for myself. So start to really see that there's no one right way to fulfill these roles. And deep down, when we choose to exist in these roles in a way that feels true to ourselves, which I believe we can, then we don't have such a difficult time with being in that role. So it's like, if I can choose to be a mother in the way that I really, really want to, that feels so true to me. I feel the same thing about a partnership. Like, as I mentioned, I'm single, but like, I don't want to be in a partnership where we do everything together and we live in one place. Like, I would freak out and I would run. But when I think about, I can be a partner in a way that feels really authentic to me, I'm not going to fight that role. So I would challenge your mind and say, okay, how can I choose these roles in my life in a way that's in alignment with my values? And as you get to know your soul, you'll start to understand that. Like, you will start to create your own definition of what it means to be these things. And I think that's what we're designed to do. Doesn't mean that in the future we don't have any roles at all. I think roles give our lives structure and containment. And I think we need containment. Otherwise, we're just kind of like That's why anarchy doesn't work, right? When people are like, I'm an anarchist, I'm like, that doesn't work, right? Like we need rules, we need order, but we can have so much more creativity in our lives when it comes to our responsibilities. And when we give ourselves that flexibility, I think we find that like, for example, like you do really want to be a mom, you do really want to be a wife, but in the way that feels true to you. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's, yeah, such a beautiful also way to bring it back to something so simple as your values, using that as a compass back to yourself, to your authenticity, to your expression, to what you came here to experience, and using that as a guide to help you define your roles, to make decisions, to guide next steps, is yeah, a beautiful holistic approach. Yeah.
Yeah. I love values. Values first. Always.
Yeah. Same. Just in your perspective, having served so many women, people, I imagine of both genders, do you think that everyone has the ability to have intuition, to make a relationship with their intuition, and to live intuitively?
I absolutely do. Yeah, I think that intuition is, I actually think what's challenging about organized religion, I personally did not grow up in a religious home, so I didn't have any sort of, I guess, programming around that. But I think maybe the old structures, like creating barriers to entry with like your own source, those structures are not thriving anymore because just existing, we absolutely all have the ability. And I would say it's kind of like a universal gift that we're all given, is like having a relationship with ourselves, with our souls, with our higher power. So absolutely, I think people who are called to work with intuition, that might be more of like, people are always like, oh, but you must have a natural gift. And I'm like, yeah, but it's also something I've cultivated. And I think a lot of that natural gift is just like being sensitive. So I'm like, anybody who grew up feeling sensitive, feeling, even misunderstood, I think like those are people who have naturally more of this intuitive sense, but it's absolutely something that everybody has access to. And I would say like transcending the definitions of like good and bad, because I think that's where people are like, oh, I'm bad at my intuition. And I'm like, you couldn't be bad at your intuition, right? Like, we're all just intuitive beings. I actually think women are more naturally intuitive because we're very cyclic. We're in flow with nature. Men are definitely intuitive in their own way. But I think a woman's intuition, like that's why women are brujas, right? Like why they've been witches in the past, because there is this, I actually think it comes from our cycles. We're naturally flowing in harmony with nature. And that creates this dynamic where we're just very tapped in. But it's available to all of us. And it's about just truly taking the time to be like, I want to listen to myself. I want to hear myself. I'm willing to be wrong. I'm willing to do things differently. And I think when we start to say that, like our soul knows it's like safe to kind of come out and play. Like I mentioned the loss of my father. Like I don't think my soul would have had nearly as much airtime had I not had that experience. I think I would have just probably stayed asleep and gone to law school and like kind of done what most of my peers did. But because I had so much space for my soul to be heard, it just came online in a very present and profound way. So I think when you create that space, and that could be simply like saying a prayer, talking to the universe, saying like, I want to hear you. I want to put my ego aside. I'm willing to be wrong. Like you said, like, where is it more important to be right than to be true? Like, just say like, I'll be wrong. Just reveal yourself to me. And I totally believe that is something that it's like a gift we're all given, is this relationship with our intuition and our souls. So like we might as well cultivate it, develop it. And I think every single person on this planet has that ability.
Yeah, I do too. And I think that one of the like more surprising things I feel like in these recent years, as I've been more intentional with building a relationship inward, is realizing what I had all along wasn't like only human made, but also divinely informed. Like I used to just think my imagination was wild and fun and creative until I entertained the possibility that it could also be something in co-creation with a higher wisdom, or same with emotions. I just thought I was really good at listening to people and being what the world would call empathetic. Like, oh, that's okay. Yeah, that's so cool that I guess, sure, I'm a sensitive person or empathetic person until I entertained the possibility that what if there is a higher intelligence or something invisible that I can't see that is allowing me to commune with this person, understand this person in a way that is a gift, that in a way that is more than maybe what I would have dismissed, but as like, you're empathetic and not taking it with reverence that this is rich for information. This is rich for just a deeper connection than like, oh yeah, I feel you, girl. But like, no, there is something there that is sacred and that is information with which I can allow either more understanding, or something else, whether it's information, intuition, whatever it is, to be of service to this person or this moment. And I don't think I ever would have thought of that if it wasn't learning from teachers like yourself that what we already have with us every day is our intuition speaking to us, and we're using it. We don't even maybe know it, but seeing it with reverence, I don't know, changed something so deeply inside that made me feel even more connected and even more like, wow, what else is there? What else are you telling me? Not just to dismiss it. You know what I mean?
Of course, I actually think what you're describing is like how to find your gifts and notice your gifts. And I believe that because we've been such a like patriarchal society, the masculine, as I mentioned, is valued for doing. So that's why even women are so caught up in like, what do I do? And it doesn't mean that women are meant to just like look gorgeous and like transmit energy all day long. Like we're here to do things as well. But there is a very beautiful value in being. And I do think that with the rise of tech and AI, like, that's where we're going to see a lot more value placed on these intangibles, because what AI can't do is beam loving light on you and open its heart to you and, give you the best advice you've ever had. So that's where I do think in the future of the economy, we are going to see a shift where we're valuing a lot more of these like intangibles. And that's where when you can open your perception, it makes finding your gifts easier because like you're saying, wow, I had this amazing ability gifted to me by the divine, whoever, that I missed entirely because I just thought that was like, oh, I'm just this, person. And that's because if you think about it, we're always taught to focus on what do you do and what do you do well. And it's like we've crossed out this like entire side of self that's it's energetic, but these are very, very important gifts. So in you saying that, I think you just bring up a beautiful way that people can notice, oh, wow, what are these things that, like, even as I was a kid, like people would be talking to me on airplanes and like, open up about their whole life story and their divorce and all these things. And I was just like, oh, they love to talk. It's like, no, but that was me like using my gifts in some way. So it's so helpful. I would recommend like anybody listening, like take inventory of these ways in which you move through the world that you might think that everybody has them, or it's nothing to necessarily put any emphasis on, but it's like your soul shining through. It's your natural gifts. It's this beautiful way that you are you in the world. And when you can notice that you're connecting to your soul and you're valuing yourself for the things that are true to you. And I think that that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's
God's work.
Yeah. It's like, what is it called? Hidden in plain sight, like, yeah. We don't even recognize it. We sort of dismiss it because like, oh, I'll just use myself like, oh, that's Saidie. Like I somehow have the mental construct that Saidie is less than the divine. So then of course, like Saidie's overfeeling or sensitivity or imagination is like, I'm going to discount that instead of now looking at it like, oh my God, that's sacred. That's like, I'm going to work with it, not against it.
Of course.
Yeah.
And what's kind of crazy is like, organized religion wanted to control people. What controls people? By making them think they're less than, right?
Yeah.
So that was like the old narratives of like, the God is above you. And I think like the next wave of spirituality that I do think will continue to be more non-denominational as like younger generations reject religion. It's about like, no, the essence of the divine is literally you. Like you are in partnership, in tandem with this essence. So it's like, of course, it helps you value and see those things as like so important because you're not, pedestaling your higher power.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like the further evolution of that I would love to hear how the women you've worked with have continued to transform. But something else that I noticed from that permission of seeing the divine within me, seeing the divine within others, also gave me like this wild permission to be okay with whatever I wanted and like not try to override it, not try to convince it, not try to overthink it, but like, wait a minute. What if this was my soul telling me that to sit here in front of this Excel sheet and be on this research project and feeling frustrated is not something that if I just stop at like cognitive work, and coaching myself and working with my mind only, that like, why is frustration a problem? And how can we move through frustration? Or how can we at least create compassion around frustration? And I think those are beautiful tools, but it would leave me with a sense of like, okay, well then I guess I have to do this because my mind says I have to do this project. Let's say, for example, if I'm sticking with this research project, but then later allowing myself to believe that the information for me was really from a higher path, from a higher perspective. And I don't have to argue it. And I don't have to like convince myself. And I don't have to do something just because my mind says I can do something. I feel like it gave me this unexpected permission to be like, okay, you know what? I don't have to do this research. My soul doesn't want of infinite possibilities. And the short time that I have on this earth, I don't have to force myself to be okay with this project, to work through the frustration, to make space for the frustration of my human experience. I can just altogether say, okay, soul, I hear you. Honey, you don't want to do this. Let's have peace and closing this door and let me be open to anything else that would make me feel alive, make me feel awe, make me feel, satisfied. And for some reason, that also unlocked something deeper within me that I wasn't expecting. But in essence, it's this permission to live, permission to be exactly as I am, not what I think I should be or who I should be, but truly who I feel I am. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I believe that authenticity is more of like a dynamic state of energetic flow with you and the universe, right? It's about kind of like being present in the now moment with wherever your energy wants to move, like that creates authenticity. And I think the nuance for me is like, you're so correct in that, like, I remember I thought I wanted to go into environmental research. And so I love the ocean. So I was like, oh, I'll go into marine biology. And I would do these like, internships at a ocean institute near my house in Orange County. And I hated it. Like my body just like really rejected it. And I remember I would be like, sitting and putting together the data for this project. And I was like, oh my God, I don't even have an ounce of energy for this. Like, this is just not where I want to be. And then I do think I had a phase on my path where I went so feminine, where I was like, I don't do anything I don't want to do. And I became a mermaid and I lived in Hawaii and it was amazing. But I think I lost a little bit of like I'm going to say natural grit. Naturally, I'm someone who I like to challenge myself as long as it's in the ways that feel good to me. So even now, as someone who I run a business, and my work in its essence gives me energy and brings me joy. I love to help people. I love to do most of the things that I do, but there will be times where I have to be like, okay, hey, I know that like you don't want to be here because I don't want to, I think my ego doesn't want to be there because it seems hard or it seems frivolous and it seems annoying. But my soul is like, okay, but we really want to grow in this way. So when you're starting early on in the path, I think it's so healthy to have a point where you're like, I don't want to do it and goodbye, right? Because it's like giving yourself like that. It's almost like that kid, like, those kids that can never eat junk food and then they go to college and they're like, so it's like you need to have that very sacred time where you're like, I don't do what my soul doesn't want to do. She doesn't want to like do the dishes. No, like that's so important. And then I think even as, you transition and you have your coaching business one day, it's like, you'll find that balance where you're like, okay, where is the resistance coming from? Is it ego resistance? I persevere. Is it the soul being like, this is not where we want to be, abort mission? And you'll be able to notice the difference. But I think you're correct. Like you need to give yourself, that's why I think the liberation I felt after losing my dad and just being like, I don't have to do these things that I don't want to do. I was like, I don't want to work in an office. Great. Like the version of me before that would be like, I don't care if you don't want to work in an office. Like that's what you do after college. You go and you get a job in an office. But I just had this liberation of like, I'm out. Anything I don't want to do, like goodbye. And that was such a healing time for me. Like I got a job working outside and in the rainforest, and it was absurd, but like I just knew I could do it because I had my soul, and like my soul is more powerful than anything. So that moment is so special, and absolutely like give yourself permission to be like, soul, take the reins. And then as you move into things that create resistance but are aligned, you'll know how to work through them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a really important nuance, because I think people could take the message and say like, screw it. I'm going to do only the things that feel good and kind of
And I've been there. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a really important point. And it's not like, I mean, one of the things that frameworks I share is like life is 50-50, like exactly 50-50. And there's no escaping the human experience. And like, there's nothing wrong with the uncomfortable parts. And I think, even taking the framework of like saying, let's use a values aligned framework for this decision. So let me go back to the research, for example. Maybe it's the data inputting that I'm frustrated with, but if I step back, is the project, the people, the collaboration still aligned with my values, with what I'm here to live? Then maybe that's just information for me to delegate that one task, but not to abandon ship entirely, versus no, this entire collaboration is something that I'm doing to please someone else, because I think that I should be doing, but my heart is not really in it. But just allowing, I think, that for you to take inventory, to take a step back, to put your own truth on the table, and using that to guide the next decision, whether it's only further aligning with what is already aligned with you and your time, energy, resources, or a bigger alignment where it's like clarity for that this whole direction is not mine. But I think what you talked about is true. We're not maybe advocating to escape the human experience, to escape the discomfort. It's part of it. We're embracing it, but with intention, with our truth at the center of it, and knowing that it serves in purpose to the expression to come through fully.
And I think the way you said it is like perfect, because you're like, this is where my heart wants to be with the project as a whole. It's this one task that I'm getting frustrated with. And I do believe, like, and again, you know this better than I do, raising children, but I think that my concern is that we're like raising a generation of children who don't know how to be resilient, right? Because anyone knows, even on the path of soul, things are hard, right? Like it's different because it's like, I call, and the author Glennon Doyle, I don't know if you've heard of her. I love her. She always talks about like the right type of hard, the wrong type of hard. There's no path where we avoid hard. And, being now an entrepreneur only because I think that's the way that I can feel fulfilled, express my essence in the world in the most, I guess, full way that I can, is through the path of being an entrepreneur. It is very hard. And there are days where I look at people that have corporate jobs and I'm like, that looks really great right about now, right? So it has its own flavor, but it is knowing that when we're clear on our heart's desires, our path, our values, we then have like a framework around like, okay, this is where I want to be. And this makes moving through the naturally hard moments that come for every single human on this earth. But like, this is the type of hard that I want to be in. Like I'm always say, I want to be up at midnight trying to figure out how to like make something work in my business. I would rather do that than being up at midnight, working for a corporation that I don't believe in. So it's like, this is the path that I really, really want to be on. And when you have that awareness, and I would honestly say maturity, you are then able to say, okay, I know where to catch my sneaky brain being like, ooh, Sean, but like, you don't want to be here. And I'll be like, no, 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 I do. It's just hard. And I'm ready for that, because I think the soul and acting on the soul's desire, it will require us to cultivate a sense of self, a strength, a resilience that like and you chose a very hard path. Becoming a doctor is very hard. Like, probably that level of exhaustion. And I don't think we need to go like blood, sweat, and tears. I think that's very like masculine paradigm. But we do need to find this like this well of like strength within us, like even on the path of the soul. So yeah, like, but you said it perfectly where you're like, this is where my heart wants to be. I believe so much in this greater mission. This is true for me. And therefore I will like take all of the challenges with grace.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for saying that out loud. Because I think sometimes we think if we follow the soul, things will be easy, comfortable, or feel good. And while it might feel liberating, authentic, full of awe, it's also the whole human experience, the discomfort, and sometimes harder than the inconvenient or the convenient distruth, is the inconvenient truth, which is why sometimes we don't choose it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And Saidie, when you were becoming a doctor, did you have times where you're like, I want to quit?
I definitely, there were times because I chose to do critical care and then cardiology. So it was like the most emotional, physical, mentally difficult paths within. So I think there was different times at different points I want to quit for different reasons. Like the first time I really went from general pediatrics to critical care and saw the amount of pain and suffering that children and families experience. Oh, that was also a moment was like, where is God? And that
of
I was like,
course.
what is happening? What do I really want to do this day in and day out to watch these innocent children like suffer in these ways? And that was one of the moments where I thought about maybe this isn't what I thought it was going to be, and thought about quitting. And then I would say at the end of 2 fellowships, finally becoming like faculty, where I thought like, is this it? Like, is it all of this training for what? It felt like something was missing. And in retrospect, now I can look back and say what was missing was me. What was like, I had done it all along for the families, for the children, for, I think unconsciously this belief that I had that this way of serving the world was somehow more greater, more impactful, more necessary. And I think I might have even relayed that to my own sense of self-worth, that I wasn't a worthy person unless I could either sacrifice myself or do something meaningful for somebody. But I think along the way, I was the person who ignored my desires or curiosities. And I thought that the way to be a good person in the world was to give everything of yourself all the time and not have boundaries. And I think along that way, I slowly eroded my relationship with myself until I was like, wait, all of this is for what? For this? Like what? And
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's such a common thing. Like that was definitely my story. Is like, I was like, I will sacrifice myself for the environment because I was like, loved the environment. And I was like, it won't matter if I like something or not. It's about like what's good for the planet, And it's like, what's interesting is I do think that like at our core, we are humanitarians. It's just about finding a way of serving that actually also makes us happy and like feels good. But I think a lot of women and people, but, yeah, it's like your soul in its essence, like loves and cares so much. It just then gets confusing when you're like, this is my mark of value on the planet is like, I give, I serve. And I think about someone like Mother Teresa. I think she probably really loved it and was like, this is my calling, right? And maybe for her, that was like genuinely authentic. But if we're doing something and it's not authentic, then it loses its meaning because it's ultimately like we've strayed from our hearts, even if to the outside world it looks like we are doing something noble. It doesn't matter if it's not, I think, like integrity with our energy and with who we are.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, it's also just for me, like forgetting myself in the equation. Like you're saying, it was like, I'll give anything for the planet. But then like, where
Yeah.
are you? You're also in the planet.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Like it's the same, like we're not separate from those we serve. We're actually very intimately related to those we serve. I'm a much better doctor when I come with my full heart, with when I can sit with curiosity, when I'm full. I can have
Yeah.
time and space and capacity. But if I'm just like always ignoring myself and I come depleted, I mean, it's like such a cliche thing, right? Put your own oxygen mask before you put others. And I just used to
So
think like, I
true.
don't need oxygen. I'm like the baby needs oxygen. Put the baby's oxygen mask on. I'll be
Cover
fine.
the
I'll
get the
die.
bees. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't care. And it took me like realizing what the cost was for me to like, okay, I can neglect
Yeah.
myself, but then to what? Yeah, I can serve you, but how well? You know? Like, am I really
Yeah.
doing the service that I think that I'm doing if I'm not involved in this and bringing myself along? And it's not, I think the difference too is like I had the belief that in order to put myself in the equation, somehow I would have to abandon the mission, the person, the thing. But
Yeah.
it's not about one or the other. It's about a both and. I can still hold them, give them my time, attention, and bring myself with them. It doesn't mean that I'm taking anything away from them for me to give to myself. And I think that's what I didn't maybe allow myself to entertain until it was like, wow, exhausted.
Of course, yeah. And you can be the best doctor, every role when you're taking care of yourself. So it's
Mhm.
like, okay, it's like a universal win-win, I say. I'm like, yeah, you get to be super taken care of and like then also excel even more at what you do. So I think like that click is so important because think about how many, people are just, burning themselves out and being like, this is like what's required. And it's like, no,
Right.
actually, you can be so much more potent and powerful when you're tending to yourself first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like what you said earlier, like it allows everything to realign to its highest path. It's like
Mm,
maybe we built the system where I light myself on fire to keep you warm, but eventually,
totally.
like, is maybe that's not the best system even for you, for the person, getting the warmth. Like, it's a terrible example, but like in that way that, like, if I can even make space in my mind and heart, that is it possible that by me bringing myself to the table, to the equation, that it's not just in service of me, but it truly is, could be in service of everyone's highest path, that maybe that everything will rearrange in a way that's more sustainable, more joyful, more whatever it is. But yeah, I think that takes a lot of awareness and curiosity and openness and the willingness or courage to deconstruct the things that maybe we were taught to, that mean we're a good person or whatever it is.
Of course, yeah. And being willing to look at that and say, like, okay, what does it really mean to be a good person? Is that like a way that I've been indoctrinated? Because think about like that is how so many women get indoctrinated. It's like a good girl
Yep.
does this, doesn't do this, does, and it's like, who created that?
Right.
Right? Like, what does
Right.
that even mean? So yeah, I think breaking free from that, and then of course you get to make those ripple effects, like you said. Like, do you have a daughter?
Yeah, two daughters. Yeah.
Okay, two daughters. The both of your daughters get to see you breaking out of that mold, and then ultimately they won't live in that mold. So
Yeah.
it's really beautiful.
God
They'll be
love you.
free
Thank
because you're
you.
free.
Amen.
Yes,
But
free the women.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to highlight your expertise and like all the women that you work with. So I was gonna ask you the last two that are on this thing, but um, after working with so many women, what is the most common thing that people are really searching for when they come to you?
Yeah, I think, and my background, so I worked with a system called human design for like 3 years. So I read a lot of human designs. It was during COVID when I started. So a lot of people in existential crises. And I think what drew me to this work was, of course, losing my father. And then I think like an obsession with finding my purpose. I was like, I need to find my soul's purpose in this world. So what I see more so than anything is people who, like, I think a lot of the words we use, like, I would say, like, you're disconnected from yourself. But what does that look like? I think the manifestation of that is feeling like you're in the wrong job, in the wrong relationship. Like there's an essay I love. If anyone has not read Joan Didion's essay on self-respect, it's like one of the best things I've ever read. She basically says in the essay, she's like, you phone home to yourself and nobody's there, right? So I'm like, that's what disconnection is like, you just don't, like, you feel like nobody is home inside of yourself. So the manifestation of that in the 3D is wrong relationship, feeling like I don't love my job, feeling like I don't love my friends. I don't feel like I'm deeply connected to the people in my life. So I see more so than anything, people will come to me just for like purpose or work. First and foremost, I do work with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of women who are starting businesses, women who want to switch their corporate jobs. But that is just like, that's not the root problem. The root problem is like the disconnection from the soul, if that makes sense. So that's what I see more than anything. And I now do something called the essence reading, which is an intuitive reading that human design is a part of it. I think human design is a way of understanding the soul's essence. And I just kind of wanted to take it one layer deeper. And that's why I learned, I became a clairvoyant. That's why I started doing soul readings under Nikki. And in the essence reading, what I'm looking at is the path that your soul really wants to be on, where you are. And in order to get to that path that your soul wants to be on, it's about embodying more of your authentic essence. That's the way I understand it. So I'll explain how your soul is asking you to grow and transform, because when we're transforming, we're actually just becoming more of our essence. It's like we're transforming from a layer of, I guess, like our human self is kind of dying off. As like extreme as that sounds, that's what an ego death is. That is what the dark night of the soul is. It's like a part of self is actually leaving so we can be more of our soul's true essence. So that's an intuitive reading that I would say kind of like created the rest of my work. But beyond that, the offering I'm most excited about is offering, I'm calling them essential immersions. So taking women on trips to experience more of their essence in the world. That's 100% my story. I have lived out of the country for about 10 years now. I lived in Hawaii for 3 years, but if anyone's been to Hawaii, it doesn't really feel like the United States at all. And that's just my soul story. I love culture. I feel like when I'm in a new place, it helps me see more of myself. I think it's the reason why I've been able to become so much more of my true self. So that's my work in 2026, is bringing women on these trips. The first one will be in Mexico in June, which I'm super excited for. I love Mexico. It's my home base now. So yeah, that's really what my work is like the soul's essence and helping people embody more of their essence. And I just do it in these different formats.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
How can people find you, connect with you, get on one of these trips?
Yes, of course. So you can find me on Instagram. I am @_Sean Nicole. You can find me through my podcast, Getting Essential, and then my website, SeanNicoleM.com. But all of the immersion info will be on my Instagram. So that would be the best place. And yeah, you can find me in all of those locations online.
Thank you so much. Is there any other last messages that you want to deliver to anyone listening about their essence or living into their essence?
No, I think that I really would just want to acknowledge, like I said, even hopping on this conversation, like we met through the soul reading method, which of course you were a student in, but I was like, oh my God, we hopped on the call and I was like, I thought you lived in Miami. Like I had a different idea of like, and then we started speaking. And I think I would just really want to acknowledge you for your work. And I think that there's value in me, but my story looks so different. And I think that I have so much admiration. I would say like, had my father not passed away, like I would probably be a corporate lawyer in the soul reading method in my like mid to late 30s. And I just had a different, plot twist that I'm grateful for. Like that's my soul's path. I wouldn't have it any other way. But I just would want to say, like, acknowledge you and really encourage you to keep sharing your heart, because I think there's so many women that will see themselves in you. And especially you have such a prestigious career path in society, and you are carrying a lot of these roles that a lot of women feel stuck in or trapped in. And I think your ability to make your life soul led while also just like choosing to follow your heart, even in this current moment of your life, and having your dark night of the soul when you did, is really, really beautiful. So I think it's amazing seeing soul led people everywhere, in the ER, in, romping around on trips to Mexico and just everywhere. So yeah, I just really want to acknowledge you for your courage and your bravery. And thank you so much for having me on.
Oh my gosh, Sean, I want to reflect it back to you. I was crying before we started recording because I'm probably getting emotional again. I didn't ever entertain it could be possible to live like you live. Like just knowing that you exist is a beacon of hope, to know that it's possible to be in such beautiful, close, intimate relationship with your soul, with your spirit, with your authenticity in a way that is so real. It's so, I want to say like flowy, because that's the word that comes to me, but natural. That's the word. Like you have such a beautiful self-trust. You have a way about you that is elevated, but also quite grounded. Like it's just so powerful to watch you navigate through life, not because of anything that you're doing, but because of who you are being. Bringing it back to your comments about the feminine intelligence and divine feminine, which then, of course, naturally, the things that you do are byproducts of who you are. Like the beautiful relationships, the way that you have impacted your clients, the way that you have touch people through your podcast, the way that you ripple out through your beingness at the center, but the way that you allow it to come through with such surrender and trust is so beautiful. I didn't even know that was possible. I had no idea. So thank you for being exactly who you are. Thank you for the courage to be it, to live your life in a way that allows permission for all of us to be in that relationship with ourself, to be at our fullest expression, and allow then whatever we do just to be an outpouring of it, Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I adore you.
You're gonna make me cry. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I honestly just, it feels affirming that all you have to do is just really like be who you are. And I think it is like the most relaxing mantra we can like all say to ourselves, because truly like what I do and how I exist, like never in a million years I thought people would just be like, where's Sean at? Like, what's going on? Like my friends always joke, they're like, wait, Sean, I thought that you were here, now you're there. And like I just never thought that it could be inspiring for people. It's just the only way I know how to be. And I say that so sincerely. It's just like how I exist. I don't know any other way. And I would never guess that just me being me could have an impact on other people. So it's like so beautiful to hear that reflected back to me. And thank you so much. And you are amazing. So much love for you.
Thank you so much as well. And we probably should give a shout out to Nikki Novo as well, yes, who is how we connected through her course, Soul Reading Method. And I will link all of her information in the show notes as well, if anyone's interested. She also has a podcast, Soul Led Living, and it's also a wonderful podcast.
Amazing. Yes. Nikki is another beautiful beacon of soul living, and she's just so in alignment with her true self, and it's amazing to see.
Yeah. Maybe one day she'll come hang out with us as well.
Yes, manifesting
it. Thank you again so much. Thank you for everything, for your words, and we'll see you out in the world creating all the beautiful ripple change that you are creating, one soul homecoming at a time that you lead.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Subscribe to the SoulSHINE podcast to never miss an up level. I love hearing your feedback and your questions, so leave an honest review to help more people find the Shine Tribe. Screenshot and email if you have a 5-star review to hello@soulshine.global, and we'll give you a free downloadable meditation and enter you to win a free private coaching session. Giveaways will occur at every 50 review milestone, and your entry will always remain in the draw. Join our community to learn and practice cognitive emotional tools for personal growth and career success. Visit soulshine.global, follow us on Instagram at soulshine_global, or email hello@soulshine.global. Thanks.